Well, here I am today at one of my favorite creeks to fish. I fish this every year for Tallapoosa bass, and somebody has done a massive cleanup job here. This is the easiest the approach has been in years and years, although I notice there's still an absolute ton of stuff up against the bridge. But yes, this is one of the premier streams for Tallapoosa bass, I would say. It's the not only the dominant black bass here, it essentially is the only black bass here. You do catch a largemouth every once in a while, but for the most part, this is a Tallapoosa bass stream, and no evidence of any hybridization with Alabama bass, which makes sense that you never catch Alabama bass in here, but still, it's nice to see. Even though we're not that far away from the actual Tallapoosa River, it's surprising how you just never catch Alabama bass in here. So the water's probably a little shade higher than normal, just because, for one thing, this is earlier than I usually come here. We're not even to Easter yet, and so all the streams are up a little higher now than they would be in May and June when I usually am here. But good water clarity. Fishing should be good, and we're going to see what we can do here. So one thing I probably don't do often enough, honestly, in these videos is discuss fishing strategies. And mainly it's because this is a science page probably more than anything else, but of course I also fish, and you're probably more interested, or at least as interested, in fishing as a science. So I haven't been to this stream in a year, never been here this time of year. It's kind of high, a little off color, at least for this stream, but you can see the water clarity is perfectly fine. So my strategy is probably a little different today than it normally would be in the summer, where if I'm fishing upstream, I'm probably throwing a plastic worm. If I'm fishing downstream, I'm probably fishing something a little more active, like a crankbait or something. But what I'm going to do today is kind of something that I've done with shoal bass a lot, and that is I'm going to start active and they have to make me switch to something slow like a worm, and I'm going to try to cover some ground. Since it is a little off colored, I'm going to elect to go for a small spinnerbait instead of a crankbait. Now I am fully bought into the theory of some professional angler years and years ago. I surely don't remember who it was. It could have been Rick Clunn, could have been Mike Iaconelli. I don't know. I don't remember. But whoever it was made the point that lures are just tools. They're not magic, and I think that's a very good way of looking at it. Fish are not the great thinkers of our time. You don't often have to try to outthink the fish. What you have to do is try to make something that's going to match what it's used to seeing, or something that's visible. So I'm going to start throwing this little guy, which is something that I've had great success with for redeye bass. It's actually made for crappie, and it's not a beetle spin, so it's a small spinnerbait. It doesn't have the movable wire on it, which makes this pretty much as weedless as any other spinnerbait, which I like, because I don't necessarily like going out in the stream to try to dislodge hung lures, especially since it's inevitable that it gets hung right where the best fishing is probably going to be. So I'm going to start off with this and see what happens. It's possible that I switch to a small crayfish crankbait before, and if all else fails, we'll be going with the 3-inch worm, which is just deadly. What you like to see right here, whole lot of gravel, not a lot of silt. There is some sediment in the stream, don't get me wrong, but one of the reasons undoubtedly why this is such a good Tallapoosa bass stream is because of the forested watershed, which you can see there, and the lack of sedimentation, which pretty much they go hand in hand. I mean, if you look up on the banks there, if I zoom in on it a little bit, you can sort of see there is some sedimentation up on the banks. You know, when the river really floods, of course it picks up sediment. That's natural for every river, regardless of how disturbed the watershed is. And when it gets over the banks, when it tops the banks, then it spreads out laterally, and of course the sediment is only suspended in the water because of the energy of the flow. So when it goes to the sides and the flow slows down, the sediment drops out. But you don't have a whole lot in the actual stream itself, and that's really what makes this a special stream. It didn't take long for the first fish to show up. It's funny, I talked about this, I think, in one of my very first videos back in the summer of last year. It's like, what makes certain places better than others? You know? So, you know, you look down there, that looks some really good stuff right there. I've almost never caught a fish out of there. The first time I ever catch a fish is this one, right upstream of it. And it's like, why? Who knows? It's almost identical to the one down there, at least from our perspective. But it's clearly something about it that these fish like. Because I almost was thinking, if they're going to be biting today, I should get my first fish here and first cast in there, bam. So here we have ourselves a little Tallapoosa bass. You can see that it's all really colored up. Makes sense because we're in the spawning season. So look at how blue the eye crescent is there on this fish. And the cheeks, classic Tallapoosa look to it right there. This is one that doesn't have a lot of blotching or barring along the sides. Not that uncommon, but you do see a lot of iridescent spotting right there. And sure enough, he chomped down that little tiny spinnerbait with no hesitation. So I might be using this for quite a bit today. I'll let this guy go in a second. But yeah, good way to start. As usual, when you put them under the water, color really comes out. Everybody will be happy to see that this has the traditional bright red eye of the redeye bass. It's not obviously the best feature because other bass can have red eyes, and even some red eyes certain times of the year won't. But this time of year, every one of these fish should have a red eye. So I'm gonna let that guy go. Thanks, bud. So my years are always the same as far as order of which I fish for things, and so this is my transition time right here. I have spent the whole time up till now fishing for striped bass, hybrid striped bass, and shoal bass, which are all three species like it, right up in the thick of the current. And it's inevitable, and I'm more cognizant of it now, and I'm watch for it more often and stop myself. But it's inevitable that when I'm in that transition period, I keep throwing lures into places that redeye bass are almost never going to be, because I'm used to doing that for the other three species I've just been fishing for. You know, so shoal bass, and I'm just going to stick with shoal bass. The hybrids are the same way, and so are the stripers. But shoal bass love the current. Like, they want to be right in the middle of the current. Redeye bass like current too, but they like it from a distance. They like it to have sides, be somewhere in an eddy where the current is zipping by, but they're a good, comfortable distance from it. And so, for instance, if I zoom in on a few things here, that area right there would be shoal bass heaven. There'd be a shoal bass under that rock, or spawning right there in that area right there for sure. There'd be a shoal bass right there in all of that as well, and probably one right there. But there's not going to be a redeye bass anywhere near any of those places. They're not even going to be in this run. They're going to be downstream a little bit than this, or where I caught that one fish, where water has started to slow down. And I always have to keep reminding myself this time of year, that I'm not fishing for shoal bass anymore. Stop throwing into these spots where you're never going to get a bite, and concentrate on what you're actually fishing for, which is redeye bass. Now this is a much more likely redeye bass pool. It's got nice flow running down the middle of it, some deep water, lots of shady overhung banks, some rocks in the middle. This is more like a redeye bass hangout than where we were down there. And that does separate them from shoal bass. You will catch shoal bass and stuff that looks like this, but you will also catch them in stuff that looks like what we were fishing in down there. And in a lot of cases, the bigger ones are in that really fast water, which is exactly opposite of what you'd expect. But anyway, this should be a place to catch some red eyes here, I would think. The area has been impacted by some pretty severe flooding that we had since the last time I've been here. That tree was standing upright the last time I was here and is now pushed along the bank, and all kinds of dug out behind that tree, the big tree right there where it comes down to the bank. It's all dug out in the back. I don't think it's going to fall over one of these days. But see what we can do here and catch a couple more of these. So here's another one right out of that pool, right on the one side of that rock right there. Notice that this one is nowhere near as colored up as the one I caught down there. And I've said it enough times you're kind of sick of hearing it, but I do wonder if this is a female perhaps. There's that urogenital pore being red and extruding like that strongly suggests this is a female. And like I've said, I don't think anyone's really ever quantified this, but it would not surprise me if female red-eye bass are traditionally less colorful than males. But either way, pretty fish. Look at how those iridescent spots shine in the light shining down on it. We'll let her go and get on her business. There's another little guy. He's probably a little too small to be sexually mature, although we don't really know much about birth rates on this fish. So he could be, especially if he's a male. Just as a reminder about how you can tell this species apart from the others. So of course you have your bright blue iridescent eye crescent, which is very, very much Tallapoosa bass. The others can be somewhat bluish, but not as much as this one. You see that super good blue on the cheeks there. Again, you don't have a lot of blotching very commonly in this fish. You have all those iridescent spots on the top, much more so than the other species do. You can see that it's got some blue edging on the soft dorsal right there. Right there. You can see that iridescent blue. That's definitely a Tallapoosa bass thing. It's even more evident down here on the anal fin. I put this in the water and zoom in on it a little bit. You can really see what I'm talking about. You can see that iridescent edge on the soft dorsal, and you can see the bluish color in the anal fin. It's almost all the way through it, all along the edge and right up against the body. There's a bit of it too. Classic Tallapoosa bass. So even when they don't have a lot of markings, these fish do stand out from the others because of that. Okay, bud. The classic red-eye bass spot right here. I mean, it's not a lot different from any other fish. I mean, if you're trout fishing, you would be fishing these same kinds of things, and even smallmouth bass. But you have these two rocks there and a space in between them with a lot of current. You have an undercut bank there. You have the wood going down into the water right there with an eddy directly behind it, and then just a nice, kind of slow run with a few bigger rocks sticking out here and there. That's the kind of place that you really, really want to target when you're looking for red-eye bass. You can, today they seem to be very scattered, or they're not biting very well, or I just haven't figured out where they are yet. But very often when you find a place like this, you can catch 10 fish out of it. They pile into these places and they don't seem to mind the company. So bottom line is, like I say a lot for shoal bass, is the same way. If you catch a fish, don't leave. Keep fishing until you stop getting bites. And if you don't, you're going to leave a lot of fish on the table. Well, if anyone's missing a grill or a picnic chair, I found them down here on the banks of this creek. Apparently you set yourself up a little bit too close to the creek and it got washed downstream. So sorry for your bad luck, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. See a lot of tracks along the shoreline here. Raccoons and probably a dog, although it could easily be a coyote. I'm no expert when it comes to that. What I don't see are people prints. Very little, if any. Could it be that I'm one of the first people this year to fish here? Seems unlikely. On the other hand, the fishing hasn't been all that great yet, so maybe they know something I don't. But my take on the fishing so far is it's pretty slow. I've caught 4, which sounds great. If I was shoal bass fishing, that would be great, but for redeye bass, especially on this stream, that's pretty slow. And I'm not sure if it's the spinnerbait or if it's that the fish aren't here. It's probably not that they're here and not biting. That's pretty much almost unheard of for redeye bass. They're eager to please. Let's just put it that way. But fish do move a lot, and we often underestimate how much they move. We'd like to think that bass, in general, are these slow, plodding creatures who like to sit up under a stump and just hang out there for a couple weeks, if not a month or a year or whatever. And that's not really the case. Even largemouth bass in reservoirs move a lot more than we think they do. Fish in these streams certainly move. They move seasonally, if nothing else. If you get a dry year and the streams really start to shrink, the fish will move into the deeper holes, and even if that's miles away. This particular stream here, I have seen that coming here in the fall. After a dry summer, the creek's about half the volume of what it is right now, and all these places that normally hold fish hardly ever did, until I got to a couple really deep holes, and then it was like 15 fish out of that hole, and then another 15 fish out of another hole. And that's not the way they were distributed a few months prior to that. So they definitely do move. We did a radio tracking study on the Tallapoosa River on this fish, along with Alabama bass, and we did have one of our Tallapoosa bass move more than 25 miles during the spawning season, and it moved from where we tagged it all the way up to the base of Lake Widowie's dam, Harris Dam, and it makes you wonder how much further would it have gone if the dam wasn't there. So we do often underestimate how much these fish move. And again, I mean, these are fish that are 8-10 inches long. That fish that moved 25 miles was, I think, 10 inches long. So just because they're small doesn't mean they don't move, and they definitely move seasonally to access spawning areas, and we know nothing about what kind of areas they particularly like to spawn in. So I'm undecided yet whether I need to make a lure change or just keep rolling and just assume that I'll run into them sooner or later. I'm going to give this a little bit longer before I make that call.